I took the night job at the hotel because it paid more. That was the reason I gave everyone. Friends, family, even myself. Overnight shifts came with a small bonus, and at the time, that mattered. I was between contracts, burning through savings faster than I wanted to admit, and the manager said the night shift was quiet. Mostly just checking people in late, he told me. Truck drivers, the occasional couple. You'll have plenty of time to read. The hotel sat just outside town, close enough to the highway to catch passers-by, far enough that no one wandered in by accident. 2 floors, about 40 rooms, beige walls, brown carpet, nothing memorable. My shift ran from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The first few nights were exactly what I'd been promised. Quiet, predictable. I brought a book and barely got through 10 pages an hour because I kept dozing off between tasks. I made coffee at midnight, again at 4, even though no one ever drank it. I learned the building's nighttime sounds quickly. The hum of the vending machine, the soft click of the ice maker, pipes knocking faintly when someone flushed a toilet upstairs. By the 4th night, I felt comfortable. Too comfortable. That's when he came in. It was 2:43 a.m. I remember because I just looked at the clock, thinking about how much longer I had left. The front doors slid open with a soft hiss, and cold air rolled into the lobby. The man who walked in didn't look rushed. He was tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket that looked too heavy for the mild weather we were having. His hair was damp, like he'd been standing outside for a while, even though it hadn't rained. He stopped a few feet from the counter and just stood there. I waited for him to speak. When he didn't, I cleared my throat. "Checking in?" I asked. He nodded once. Slow. I asked for his ID. There was a pause. Not long enough to be suspicious on its own, but long enough that I noticed it. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed it over. The card felt colder than it should have. I glanced at the name. It was forgettable. One of those names you don't retain even while you're reading it. I typed it into the system and waited. Nothing came up. I frowned and tried again. Slower this time. Still nothing. "That's strange," I said, half to myself. "It's not pulling up." He watched me without blinking. "Did you maybe book under a different name?" I asked. "No," he said. His voice was low, flat, no accent I could place. I created a new entry for him, assigning him a room on the 2nd floor, close to the stairwell. That was standard for late arrivals, easier access, less walking. When I handed him the key card, our fingers brushed. His hand was cold, not cool from the night air, cold in a way that made me pull my hand back without thinking. He took the card and walked away without saying thank you. The doors slid shut behind him, and the lobby felt strangely empty afterward. Too still. I shook it off and made a note in the logbook. Late check-in, 2nd floor, no issues. At 3:15 a.m., I did my routine walkthrough. I grabbed the master key and headed upstairs, checking doors, making sure nothing looked out of place. When I reached the 2nd floor, I noticed his room door was slightly open, just a crack. That immediately put me on edge. Hotel policy was clear. Doors weren't supposed to be left ajar. It was a safety issue. I knocked lightly. No answer. I knocked again, louder. "Front desk," I called. "Just checking in." Nothing. I pushed the door open a few inches. The room was empty. No luggage, no jacket, no signs anyone had been there. The bed was perfectly made, the bathroom untouched. Even the air felt stale, like it hadn't been occupied at all. I stood there longer than I should have, a strange unease crawling up my spine. I closed the door and went back downstairs. At the desk, I pulled up the registry. The entry I'd created earlier was gone. Not crossed out, not marked as checked out. Gone. I checked the logs. I checked the system history. Nothing. It was like I'd never typed it in at all. I told myself it was a glitch. Old system, cheap software. Stuff like that happens. Still, I didn't like it. Around 5:50 a.m., as the sky outside started to lighten just slightly, the front doors slid open again. The same man walked in. Same jacket, same damp hair. He stopped at the counter and looked at me. "I need a key," he said. My stomach dropped. "For which room?" I asked carefully. "The one I had before?" I pulled up the registry again, even though I already knew what I'd see. Nothing. "I'm sorry," I said. "I don't have you checked in." He leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the counter. "I never checked out," he said. There was no anger in his voice, no threat, just certainty. I looked at his hands. The skin looked pale, almost gray under the fluorescent lights. I didn't argue. I printed a new key and slid it across the counter. This time I didn't let our fingers touch. He smiled. It wasn't wide, it didn't show teeth. It was small, satisfied. He walked away again. At 6:30 a.m., when the day shift arrived, I told the manager everything. The missing entry, the empty room, the second check-in. He listened quietly, then pulled up the system himself. "There's no record of anyone like that," he said, "and no one matching that description has stayed here." He laughed it off, told me I was tired. I quit 2 days later. A week after that, I drove past the hotel out of curiosity. The parking lot was empty. The sign was dark. It looked like it had been closed for years. I only stayed at that hotel because my car broke down. That's the clean version of the story. The one I usually tell when someone asks why I was there in the first place. It sounds ordinary, harmless, like a bad night that just went a little sideways. The truth is, I remember every detail of that night far too clearly for it to be ordinary. It was late October, just a few days before Halloween. I'd been driving for most of the day, heading back from a contract job that wrapped up later than expected. The sun had gone down hours earlier, and the road had thinned out until it felt like I was the only one moving through that stretch of highway. Just me, the headlights, and the endless black ahead. Around 11:30 p.m., my car started acting strange. Nothing dramatic at first. The radio cut out for a second, the dashboard lights dimmed, then brightened again. I tapped the steering wheel, annoyed, telling myself it was nothing. Then the engine light came on. A few miles later, the car shuddered, hard enough that I felt it through the seat. I slowed down instinctively, heart beating faster now. When I pressed the gas again, the response was sluggish, like the car didn't want to cooperate anymore. I didn't have many choices. I took the next exit I saw, one of those exits with no real name, just a number and a small green sign promising gas, food, and lodging. The hotel was right off the ramp. It was 3 stories tall, beige and forgettable, with a red neon sign that buzzed softly in the cold air. A few letters flickered, like they were on their last legs. The parking lot was wide and mostly empty. 4 cars, maybe 5, spaced far apart like people who didn't want to sit too close to each other. I sat in my car for a moment before getting out. The engine ticked as it cooled. The night was quiet, too quiet for a place sitting right beside a highway. Even the wind felt muted. Inside, the lobby smelled like old carpet and cleaning solution. Lemon, maybe, or something trying to smell like lemon. The lighting was warm but dim, casting shadows that clung to the corners of the room. There was no one at the desk at first. I rang the bell. Once, then again, a little harder. After maybe 30 seconds, a man stepped out from a back room. He looked tired in a way that went beyond age. Dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slightly hunched, like gravity was working overtime on him. "Evening," he said. His voice was flat but polite. I told him my situation. Car trouble. Just needed a room for the night. He nodded as he typed. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately. "We're pretty empty tonight," he said. "You picked a quiet one." He said it like a warning disguised as reassurance. He handed me a key card and said, "4th floor, room 417. That number stuck with me instantly. I don't know why. I remember glancing down at the card twice, like my brain was telling me to memorize it. The elevator was out of order, so I took the stairs. The stairwell lights flickered faintly as I climbed, buzzing overhead. Each step echoed in a way that made the space feel hollow, like the building was bigger on the inside than it should have been. By the time I reached the 4th floor, my ears felt slightly plugged, like the pressure hadn't equalized yet. The hallway was long and straight, lined with identical doors. The carpet was dark red, with a pattern that reminded me of stains if I stared too long. The air felt cooler up there. Still, almost stale. No TVs playing, no muffled conversations, no footsteps. Just the hum of something moving behind the walls. Room 417 was near the end of the hall. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not bad, just old. Like the room had been closed for a while and only recently opened again. The room itself looked normal. 2 queen beds, a desk with a lamp, a small TV bolted to the wall, curtains drawn tight over the window. The bathroom light was off. I dropped my bag onto the bed closest to the door and sat down, rubbing my eyes. That's when something caught my attention. The other bed looked used. Not messy, just disturbed. The blanket was folded inward near the center, like someone had sat there and gotten up. The pillow had a shallow dent in it, still holding its shape. I stood there longer than I meant to, staring at it. Housekeeping, I told myself. Someone rushed. Still, a small knot tightened in my stomach. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. I even crouched down and looked under the beds, feeling stupid as I did it. Nothing. I locked the door behind me and tried to shake it off. I took a quick shower, leaving the curtain partly open. The sound of the water felt too loud in the small bathroom, and I kept pausing to listen for anything else underneath it. When I stepped back into the room, the air felt colder. I checked the thermostat. It was still set to 72. I lay down fully dressed, too tired to care, and scrolled through my phone until my battery dipped below 10%. I plugged it in, turned off the lamp, and stared at the ceiling. That's when I heard the breathing. Slow, steady, controlled. It wasn't loud. It didn't sound panicked or labored. Just calm breathing. It wasn't coming from the hallway. It wasn't coming from the vents. It was coming from inside the room. I sat up so fast my head spun. The sound stopped immediately. I held my breath, listening. My ears rang in the silence. After a moment, I let out a shaky laugh, told myself I was overtired, that my brain was filling in gaps. I lay back down. A few minutes passed. Then the other bed creaked. Just once. The sound of weight shifting. I turned my head slowly, eyes fixed on the shape of the other bed in the dark. The pillow, the blanket. Nothing moved. My heart hammered against my ribs. I didn't sleep after that. I lay there for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to every sound the room made. The AC kicking on, pipes ticking faintly. Once or twice, I thought I heard fabric brushing against fabric. Another time, I felt a faint vibration through the mattress, like someone had stood up nearby. At exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a low battery warning. That was it for me. I grabbed my wallet, keys, and phone and left the room without packing anything else. The hallway felt longer on the way out. Colder. As I pulled the door shut, something caught my eye. A Do Not Disturb sign hung from the handle. I hadn't put it there. I didn't go back for my bag. I didn't speak to the front desk. I drove away on a car that somehow managed to start without hesitation. I've stayed in a lot of hotels since then. I never accept a room on the 4th floor, and I never stay in room 417. I was already exhausted when I checked into that hotel. Not the normal kind of tired you fix with sleep. It was deeper than that, the kind that makes your thoughts feel slightly delayed, like the world is running half a second ahead of you. I'd been on the road since early morning, driving through steady rain that never turned heavy enough to justify pulling over, but never stopped long enough to feel safe either. The windshield wipers had been on the same setting for hours, squeaking faintly with every pass. My shoulders ached from gripping the wheel. My eyes burned. When I saw the hotel sign glowing through the rain just after midnight, it felt like a relief I hadn't earned. The parking lot was slick and reflective, puddles pooling in the cracks of the asphalt. A handful of cars were parked near the building. Nothing unusual, nothing comforting either. Inside, the lobby was quiet. A TV played softly behind the desk, some late-night news show with the volume turned low. The clerk barely looked up when I checked in. "Third floor, room 312, he said, sliding the key toward me. The elevator worked, but it moved slowly, groaning as it climbed. The fluorescent light inside flickered once, then steadied. I stared at my reflection in the metal doors. I looked older than I remembered. The third-floor hallway smelled faintly of detergent and something else I couldn't place. The carpet was dark, patterned, meant to hide stains. The lights buzzed softly overhead. Room 312 was near the middle of the hall. Inside, the room was clean, almost aggressively so. The bedspread was perfectly smooth. The desk was empty, not even the usual hotel notepad or pen. The curtains were closed tight, blocking out the rain and the parking lot lights. I locked the door behind me, checked it twice. I didn't bother unpacking. I ate a granola bar from my bag, drank half a bottle of warm water, and lay down fully clothed. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and placed my phone face down on the nightstand. I remember thinking I'd be asleep in seconds. I wasn't. Sometime later, I didn't know how long, I heard the knock. 3 quick taps, sharp, clean. I opened my eyes and checked my phone. 1:14 a.m. "Hello," I called, my voice hoarse. No answer. I sat up, listening. The rain tapped steadily against the window behind the curtains. Somewhere down the hall, a door closed softly. I got up and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, no shadows, no movement. I opened the door anyway, just enough to check. The carpet outside was undisturbed, no wet footprints, no sounds fading away. I closed the door and locked it again. 5 minutes passed, then came another knock. Slower this time, deliberate, each tap spaced evenly, like whoever was knocking wanted me to know they were in no hurry. I didn't answer. My heart started pounding, loud enough that I wondered if I'd imagined the knock entirely. I checked the peephole again. Nothing. The third knock came a minute later. Louder. Closer. I stood there frozen, staring at the door. That's when I realized something that made my stomach twist. The sound wasn't echoing through the hallway. It was too contained, too muted, like it wasn't coming from the other side of the door at all. Another knock. This one sounded like knuckles against wood from inches away, from the inside. I took a step back, then another. My skin prickled, every instinct telling me something was wrong, deeply wrong. The knocking stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, pressing in on my ears. I stood there for what felt like forever, barely breathing. Then I heard a voice, soft, calm, right behind the door. "I know you're in there." It wasn't angry. It wasn't threatening. It sounded almost conversational, like someone reminding me of something obvious. I backed away until I felt the edge of the bed against my legs. My hands were shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists to keep them steady. I didn't respond. The voice didn't repeat itself. Instead, there was one final knock. 3 taps, exactly like the first. Then nothing. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed until morning, lights on, door locked, watching the clock crawl forward minute by minute. Every sound made me flinch. Every distant footstep tightened my chest. At 6:02 a.m., I opened the door. The hallway was empty, no scratches, no marks. Just the same quiet carpet and buzzing lights. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on the inside of the door. 3 faint impressions in the wood. Right at chest height. Right where someone's knuckles would rest. I checked out without mentioning it. I never went back to that hotel. And to this day, I still sleep with something pressed against my door, just in case.